So you walk up to the mic in front of a huge crowd and you tell Charlie Kirk,
I believe that the breeding, exploitation, and killing of animals for food when we do not have to is immoral.
that takes some serious guts, man. So tell us, what made you do it?
I just care a lot about the vegan movement and animal rights, and I feel like it doesn't get enough representation, especially in the conservative space. Looks-wise, I look like someone who would be more masculine, or people always tell me in person, "Oh, you're a vegan? You don't look like a vegan." I wanted to be a good representation to Charlie and to the audience that I can be healthy. I'm into MMA, bodybuilding, traditionally like masculine minded, and still be vegan. When I went up, I was feeling a little bit of butterflies, but once I got up there, it's kind of like before an MMA fight, and before you go out, you got all the butterflies, like you're feeling a little nervous, and then you get in there, like the cage locks, and then once I was on the mic and like I was talking to him, I was locked in, and it was like I felt very calm, very centered, which I hope came across in the video.
As I understand it, you've actually had some serious health struggles in your life. I'm curious to know if you facing such a serious personal struggle, if you think that actually influenced your decision now to try to, help animals. Did that give you empathy for them, is what I'm asking. And so tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with a brain tumor when I was 21. I'm 25 now. Wow. That diagnosis actually came as a relief because one, it was benign, so it wasn't going to kill me, and it explained symptoms that I had that I was experiencing that went undiagnosed for years. No libido, no energy, severe depression, severe social anxiety. Just felt like an 80-year-old man in like otherwise healthy 19, 20, 21-year-old's body. How it got me to veganism, I basically was like, well, I'm gonna either off myself or I'm going to fix myself. I researched tons and tons of different people who were also suffering with insecurity and their experiences with that. And so this opened my eyes up to people's like suffering and just acknowledging and understanding, opening my empathy up to other people's perspectives. And I'm really grateful I did that, because with that boosted my empathy just for like everyone and just in general. And I think that once I had the start of going down where I became a vegan, that base of dealing with my tumor and dealing with my own suffering, and then also opening my perspectives to so many other people's suffering in the world, made me able to empathize with the animal suffering.
And you're a masculinity coach, right? You're actually trying to teach men how to be more healthily masculine. When someone thinks about a vegan masculinity coach, they're probably thinking tofu, which you do eat, by the way, but yeah, tofu, yoga pants, and sad biceps or something, along those lines. Probably not expecting an MMA fight and bodybuilder. For someone out there who's baffled by that, the idea that somebody like you would be a vegan, what's your response to that?
I would just say like, wow, why does that baffle you? And try to, that's my point, is to get under those stereotypes and that propaganda of that, people who are vegan are not masculine, and that you need to eat meat to be masculine, and try to get under that. What is a vegan supposed to look like? And challenge them on their view in that sense. They don't really have reasons or reasoning or logic or evidence for why they believe that people who are vegan can't be masculine.
When you were first considering going vegan, as somebody who is leaning towards the conservative side of things and, interested in traditional masculinity and fighting and bodybuilding and I suppose surrounded by people who are also that kind of way as well, did you ever feel like you were betraying something culturally or politically by going vegan?
I think one of the negative connotations on masculinity is the guy who is loud and abrasive, doesn't care about others, and screws over other people to get what he wants, and is like, the stereotypical, movie jock, douchebag, like bad boy kind of, right? If we look at the culture now with, hookup culture and how just it's kind of destroying a lot of aspects of society. And really all that is just giving into your lust, right? It's giving into the pleasures of the flesh, instead of overcoming it. And that while, yes, it takes a guy who's attractive to do that, just because you have that ability does not mean that it is right to do. Just because you have the ability to eat meat does not mean that is right to do, when I believe that if you're, sleeping with many different women without committing to them, that's going to be damaging to them in the long run. Just like how you eating meat is damaging to other sentient beings as well. Really, what masculinity is being more like a leader and having empathy for others. And so I've always had like immense importance on empathy and a great sense of empathy. And that was key to my feeling of masculinity. So when I went vegan, I'm also very like logical. So I always am searching for truth over preconceived beliefs or stereotypes. Oh, I need to eat meat because I'm a man, right? So once I got down that rabbit hole, I very quickly realized that the way I was living was wrong. And I didn't really have any like dissonance or any like debate in my head about that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. No, I see what you're getting at there. You feel like it aligns with you as your core and your core principles, you know, the things that you believe, the other views that you hold within this kind of, I suppose, what some people would consider to be hardcore space of fighting and strength building and that kind of thing, as opposed to it being some kind of wimpy, soft thing that other people would consider it to be, right?
Absolutely. I think it is masculine. I think it's more masculine to be vegan. I think it fits right in with my ideology and what I believe and traditional masculinity. Traditional masculinity in culture now being we eat meat, I think is actually not masculine, despite everyone thinking that it is. I don't crave meat at all anymore. But at the time, I acknowledged that when I was eating meat, I loved it. And so for people who are giving it up, even if they don't want to admit that, because admitting that the reason that they want to contribute to animal suffering is because they like how their bodies taste, it's a hard thing to acknowledge, but deep down, that's typically what it is for most people. I think that one of the main components of masculinity is going to be discipline, right? Discipline, putting your long-term goals and your success and the success of people around you over short-term pleasure, right? So that's a lot of what I coach into my clients. Is just we build up a framework of resisting giving into pleasures for long-term success. And I think that veganism fits right into that. Masculinity influencers, fitness coaches, stuff like that, it's always promoting discipline. But they also eat meat. I do believe veganism not only can fit into a sense of traditional masculinity, but it is actually more aligned with traditional masculinity than eating meat and contributing to, the animal agriculture system in this modern society.
I don't imagine you've got many vegans around you, being an MMA fighting bodybuilder in the masculinity world. So how did it, tell us that, how did it come about?
So I don't remember exactly what was the white rabbit, if you know what I mean. The first thing that I saw that led me down the rabbit hole. But what really was the first thing that kind of hit the light bulb up was I think that my YouTube algorithm caught on to something. Like I was like looking at something about veganism and I got an Earthling Ed video of him debating someone. And I watched that video. And like I said, I'm like very logical. I'm not tied to any of my beliefs. I believe what I believe through logic and reasoning. And if someone gives better logic and better reasoning than me, I'll change my beliefs to their stance. And so obviously Earthling Ed logically destroys every single debate and all those videos. So I think I watched one more, but I was still like, I like buffalo wings and pizza, and I want to find ways that I can still eat those. So I was like, well, let me see if it's health and performance, right? That was my excuse. Well, I'm into bodybuilding, and like maybe when I'm older, like I can do it, but right now I can't. I need to eat meat for protein. So I did a couple more days of research and like anecdotes from other people like on Reddit, and also like looked at science just to make sure that I could have full health and performance on a vegan diet. I watched like Game Changers, Forks Over Knives. There was nothing that I could tried as best I could to find something that'd be like, oh, so this is why I can't eat meat. I couldn't find anything. And that day I was like, to my fiance, I was like, all right, we're going to have like one more pizza. Because we had this pizza place we love to go to. And then after that, I'm never eating animal products again. And then I believe this was like a sign from God. We went to this is like the same night after I did all that research. We went to our favorite pizza place that usually closed at like 10 p.m. We'd always go like 9:15, like 9:30. And they'd always let us in and like feed us every single time. And this time we went like even earlier than we usually go, like right around 9. And there's people inside and everything. And as we get to the door, we try opening it and it's locked. And I was like, Oh my gosh. I felt like that was like a sign directly from God that it was like, this is the right path, like to be vegan. And you're not going to have this last pizza. You're just going to be vegan now.
What about the people that you're like associating with, like hanging out with, like fighters, bodybuilders? How are they reacting to this now, seeing all these changes you've made and this? And do you get into the ethics with them and the diet stuff with them?
So with my family, who all my family's like very active as well into kind of all the same things I'm into. I have a brother, 2 sisters, my dad. Immediately, so I turned vegan in November, went home, tried to convince them. I got my dad to go vegan. So I was very much pushing the ethics. I was like, these are people I'm around all the time. I'm not holding no boundaries. Like, I don't care. I'm gonna push. And then Christmas, the rest of my family went vegan. So that was awesome. You're like one of my dad's like favorite like vegan influencers too. So he's probably gonna.
Oh really? That's nice, man.
I always like go home and he has you on the TV. So
dude, that's so nice to hear.
Yeah. But in terms of like people kind of MMA, and I didn't really push too much on the ethics there. I just more so want to be in that sense at the time, just like a beacon of like I can be healthy. Like they train with me, they see that I fight well, my energy's good, and saying that I'm vegan, right? And so I don't really push too much in terms of that.
You've I guess been maintaining your training and everything the same as before. What have you been eating then? What's the fuel?
So when I first went vegan, I was super addicted to meat still. Like it took me like a couple weeks, and then I was like, I haven't craved meat since. But in the beginning, my goal was just to not eat animal products. I wasn't really like into like veggies and stuff, and like tofu, like this didn't sound good to me, or any of the things didn't sound good to me. So I was like, all right, well, I can't eat animal products. I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to eat in an enjoyable way that doesn't cause suffering to animals. But physically, I actually felt amazing. Now, my diet is much cleaner. Or I don't eat junk food, and I love what I eat. So typically, what I'll eat is a tofu bowl, stir fry with like tofu, edamame, veggies, rice, like a block of tofu in there, plus edamame. That gives me like 60 grams. Easy. It's delicious. Put some sauce in it. Then I'll have typically like a pack of seitan. Like 8 ounces of it a day. That's 80 grams of protein and like 360 calories, which is insane. Better than any lean beef that I was eating before.
Are you feeling good?
I feel amazing. I feel
awesome.
I feel similar to how I felt when I was eating like healthy with meat as well.
Right.
Except that the main things I noticed that are different are my cardio is a lot better. Strength-wise is about the same. I feel cleaner. And the main thing is that every time after I would have a big meal before, like, you know, ground beef, pasta, stuff like that, I'd be like in the couch, sluggish, slumped, or like a big steak, slumped. And I don't usually always have carbs with my meal too. So I thought this is just what happens when I have carbs. Like, it's just, you know, how I feel, like carb crash. And then since I went vegan, I have not had that once. I could eat an entire pound and a half of tofu with a bunch of veggies and rice and like a huge giant bowl, stuff myself, and then sit down and like write with like no brain fog and work with no brain fog. So those are the main 2 things I noticed in terms of benefit. In terms of like bodybuilding itself and muscle gains, it's not gonna be that much of a difference. It's just mainly about protein, wherever you get it from. And then I didn't really notice much of a difference in strength. But those other 2 things I did notice. And then the best benefit obviously is that I have the conscious of eating in a way that does not cause harm to those animals, not participating in animal agriculture. So,
look, I've got one more question for you before we get to that. Where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at my first and last name, Michael Biletich. And I also have a website that is for my business called evolvedmethodlife.com. And you can book a call with me to talk about it. So Instagram and that website are going to be the main ways you can find me.
Awesome. So my last question for you, it's actually around the conservative side of things that we've kind of touched on a little bit. Now, there's a couple of things happening right now. Trump, for example, is currently phasing out animal testing on dogs and other animals. Over the last year or so, there's been some huge moments where conservatives and people on that side of the aisle have been pushing back on things. Like, for example, lots of people talking about ritual slaughter, like halal and kosher. They're very much opposed to it. Non-stun slaughter. They're also big kickoff about the Fred the raccoon and Peanut the squirrel, if you remember that. That was mostly conservative speaking about that in defense of those animals. So it's clear that people on that side of the aisle and this kind of more conservative traditional mindset absolutely will defend animals and will stand up for animals in certain moments. In your personal opinion, why do you think they draw the line at food and don't stand up for those animals?
Like I said, food brings them pleasure, right? It gives them the dopamine. Our brains do not want to give up the things that give us dopamine. That's how we're literally designed. Food, sex, all those things. Those are the things that we're, evolutionary wired to chase, and that bring kind of like enjoyment and like a sense of happiness a lot of times in our life. I think that a lot of that is just going to be, they're concerned about animals, but not if it comes in between them and the dopamine. You know what I mean? They draw that line there. I think that eating, the domesticated animals that we do is also ingrained in like the conservative culture, because traditionally that is what we've done to survive for a long time, is, use animals for dairy, for meat, when we, didn't have the luxury of having the abundance of food in supermarkets like we have now. So I think that that's another thing that is just so ingrained into the culture, and that it's not even thought of as animal cruelty. And those animals aren't even considered when you think about animal rights. Asking someone who cares about dogs, like, oh, why dogs? Like, what can I do that to dogs? Do I be able to take a dog from the shelter and like slit its throat and like cook it up and eat it? And be like, no, that'd be like awful. And it's like, why not? And it's just like, because we don't do that to dogs. Dogs are pets. So it's just so culturally ingrained, one, and two, they had to give up a lot of that pleasure. And I just know that when you are eating animal products, the thought of like, and that's so much of your diet, the thought of having to eat just plants does not sound pleasurable, or it sounds like suffering. At least to me, that's how it sounded before I turned, but now I realize that it's not. So I think that's kind of why.